How you guys doing?
I'm good.
It's been a while.
I'm
I haven't
good.
seen you guys.
Yeah, not since the last time.
Not since the last time. Not much has happened. Has anything happened like worldwide?
A lot has happened. A lot has happened in the last 2 weeks.
I realized today I just get my news from TikTok. I was laughing at myself because I realized this morning. So Tom, I sent you a post. It was like, Man City relegated from the Premier League, and I was like, what? So I realized now, whenever I'm interested in something, I used to like go and Google it. Now, thanks to the TikTok thing, it just is like, it'll give you the information now, clicking the little search thing.
Yeah.
And I realized that's how I get all my news now. And I was a little disappointed in myself for that, which then it gave me the news. But I was like, they tricked me. They tricked me. And now they keep me on the app. Because before I would go to Google and be like, Google, blah, blah, blah. And now I just keep scrolling because...
See, I don't understand that. Using TikTok as Google. TikTok is for funny videos of people saying.
But I don't Google it. It's already there. It's like, why? Like on the post, it's like Man City relegated, and then it says at the bottom, why were Man City relegated or whatever. So I click it, and then it gives me the answer.
See, like if I do that,
it tricks me.
Were they actually relegated?
Yeah, they
really.
They broke the spending rules. I think there's 115 cases against them.
Oh,
that's the bear of what TikTok told me. So they're done,
dude,
and
that's
all
big.
The victories have been taken away. It's big. I saw that. That made me go.
Even their Champions League wins and stuff.
Well, let's see. What did it say? Actually, let me go search it up on TikTok again.
Dude, that's huge. Man City's like one of the best teams,
right?
Let me look up my content farmed AI video explaining the controversy.
Stripped of 3 Premier League titles and relegated to League 2.
Wow, that sucks.
Yeah. See?
I bet
it's
all
that
the
easy. It just tells me right there, search, and then I click it, and then I get all the news.
I've been getting my news direct from the source recently. I've been going through this weird funk where I get my news, like, I've been following politics, like, stupidly close recently, and I feel like such a boomer for it. No, I've been watching, like, the House of Commons. Like, I've been watching them debate bills in the House of Commons, and it's just embarrassing.
That is...
like, the government in this country is, like, a bunch of toddlers now arguing over, like, silly things and calling each other, like, poo-poo pee-pee names, and it's, like, hilarious. But I'm driving myself crazy.
Wait, they called each other poo-poo pee-pee? I feel like I would have heard that on CBC. That would have been like world-shattering news.
That's a world news if someone said pee-pee poo-poo.
Justin Trudeau said poo-poo pee-pee to the NDP leader when talking about...
Pierre said, I drink pee-pee poo-poo for breakfast.
Pierre Poilievre says Justin Trudeau is a pee-pee poo-poo head and not invited to his birthday.
I like it. Anyways, enough about politics.
But no, I've been following it way too closely because I've just like had nothing really else to do, and it sucks.
I've just been watching too much Sopranos.
I've been watching The Sopranos too. I just started watching The Sopranos.
It's so good,
dude. I gotta get my crave back.
It's really good. I think I'm on the fifth. I think I'm on the 5th episode, first season, and I'm like hooked.
You know, I have nothing to do when I'm watching 3 1-hour-long episodes back to back because I'm just so enthralled. It's good.
I haven't binged it, so I'm only doing like 1 episode every couple days, and it's I'm like dying every time I come home from something. I'm just like, I want to watch The Sopranos, but then it's like I don't want to dedicate an hour of my life to this.
Right when you think
they pull you back in,
it pulls you back in. Did you know, I actually saw, from TikTok I learned this, actually. From TikTok I learned, so after the first episode, the pilot episode premiered of that.
Yeah, I saw this too, I think.
He got death threats from anonymous, but a mobster being like, a Don does not wear shorts. And like, that was like the phone call.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that.
Well, actually, it was that TikTok that made me start watching.
Oh, that's too funny. I think Adam was the one that got me in on it.
It's basically like The Sopranos walked so that Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul could run. That's the vibe I'm getting.
And so you just me watching those the whole time I was going through the first season of it, I was just like, you could just see all the points where they just took reference from it, especially even just the first episode.
What's the camera? The camera is so Breaking Bad to me.
Mm-hmm. Anyways,
yes.
Enough about Sopranos and pee-pee-poo-poo politics. I think we should get into the wonderful movie that Jordan picked out this week.
I did it again.
He did it.
I got to do it again.
You got to do it 2 weeks in a row. Jordan, what movie do you pick?
I picked La La Land for this week.
It's a very good movie. I was very excited when you said that one. But I am curious what in particular made you want to talk about this movie.
He's frozen on my screen.
Yeah, that Ethernet really worked out for him. He made a whole thing about plugging his Ethernet cord, and now he's frozen. Dude got so excited he broke his computer.
Yeah. His laptop blue screened.
Oh, that's great. Okay, well, while we're waiting for Jordan, why don't we go and watch the movie one more time?
I'm back.
Hello, welcome back, blue screen baby.
Look who decided to show up.
So I want to ask Jordan, why La La Land for this episode? What inspired you to pick this one?
Why La La Land? That's a good question. Well, I wanted to pick another bad movie, but I didn't want to do that to you guys. So I went through sort of like a little mental check of like what are some good movies that I like. And we've never talked about a musical on here, so that's new territory. But yeah, I don't know. I love this movie. I think it's magical. I think it's whimsical. It's very fun.
I do want to know how you guys, going into La La Land, how you guys feel about musicals, because I know a lot of people aren't the biggest fan of movie musicals, and I want to know where you guys stood before going into this and if it's changed coming out of it.
Well, see, that's where I was hoping Asha would be here for this episode, because I know Asha doesn't like musicals, but this is one that really can change your look at it because it's done so well. I mean, I like musicals. I wouldn't shy away from a musical. There's some bad ones out there, but this one, cream of the crop. Passion for musical.
Yeah, there's only like a handful of like songs in this. A lot of it is like orchestral, like the score, and then it's just carrying the motifs of the songs as you go through. It feels very connected. But yeah, I love musicals. I think they're great. I was a theater kid when I was about yay high.
Yeah, I believe it.
Well, easy.
I was too. I'm making the joke because I was too.
I know you guys know me a little bit on not loving musicals.
I'm sorry,
too much.
Have we met? Have we met, Tom?
You look really familiar.
You look really familiar. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, and especially back when this movie came out, I hated them for some weird reason. I think it was teen angst or something, but I hated musicals when this came out. And I remember watching this as like a 18-year-old kid with no life and no real friends. I would sit up at night and watch movies like randomly just to keep my mind off of other things. So I watched this movie originally out of like pure boredom and a crush on Emma Stone.
Mine was the opposite.
This movie changed, like weirdly, I think changed my life in a way, because this movie was one of the main movies that made me want to pursue film in my life, having no interest for it to begin with. I think that's kind of ironic, but yeah, I think this movie changes musicals for a lot of people. And I think mainly it's because it's one of the most original musicals I think you could ever watch.
Yeah.
Like it kind of flipped the script on the musical genre by making it more narrative based rather than showpiece based.
I think too with it also brought the story of the old musicals and stuff and brought it, because now I think a lot of the musicals are a lot about, we got these big actors, actresses singing these big songs. But this one, it was really grounded in the old musicals and the old Hollywood, but then was brought into reality. Anyways.
Yeah, like it's an original story and an original thing all its own. Yet it takes so much from those old golden age Hollywood musicals.
What I love about it too is watching a few interviews with Damien Chazelle. his like the whole main thing with this movie was they wanted to take a step away from the traditional musical while keeping the magic of this Hollywood era and the magic of the city of LA. And it was very intentional that they wanted it to be different, even down to the casting of Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone.
Fun fact. It was also, they were considering Emma Watson and Miles Teller. Fun fact.
Oh, really?
But then
It's
they
a
didn't
very
do it.
abrasive fun fact.
Sorry.
I
I
didn't
wanted to
know that.
say it was midpoint. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, like he wanted to cast people who weren't traditional musical people and more recognized as just standard delivery actors like Emma Stone and Ryan, right? Like,
And it really adds to that like realism.
yeah, exactly, right? To kind of give the film that grounding perspective. And I think it worked because mainly this whole movie lived off the ground, and our leads did such an amazing job grounding it because they were just able to perform as such and they're recognized as such. And I think like just the conception of that whole making it a musical, but also making it just like a really good piece of storytelling on its own, shined insanely well with it. So.
And also like Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling have history, performing together. So their chemistry is just like effortless. Like, they really make the dialogue like, they could just read off a page and like perform, but like it's that chemistry that just makes the script like sing,
And two, even the scenes where there was no music and it was just kind of them talking, they would add a rhythm to it where they would kind of keep a rhythm in their talking so that the pacing of it still stayed musical despite the music being taken part of it, which I think also adds to their chemistry because they're in sync and they're kind of keeping that rhythm together, which I think is pretty cool.
A super good example of that actually is when he visits her at work and there's no like music associated with that dialogue scene, and he comes in so dancerly, like he kind of like
he like slides into frame.
Yeah. He slides up and then he's like kind of tapping on the thing and he's swaying and he's like, very normal like mannerisms if it weren't a musical in a weird way, but also to the point that it is a musical. It really keeps you with like the fact that there's rhythm in the air and things are going, and just like the way the camera moves as well when they're just doing a walk and talk and it kind of sweeps and it lifts and drops. It's like very almost conductor, like, like the camera is almost like a conductor for this movie where like it goes up, it's like an upbeat, and it comes down, it's like a downbeat. Although like super slow and sweeping, but it's like another layer to the music that isn't an audio thing. It's more visual, but it has so many like musical and audible properties to like how it moves that it really, really works.
I think too, one of the things that I think it was Damien said in one of the behind the scenes things I watch is like with musicals, like the
I think I know the quote you're talking about.
I didn't ask you.
Oh, so you don't like it when Jordan interrupts you, eh?
The turns are tabling.
The tables have turned. Like with musicals too, like people, there's always that like thing for people where it's like, oh, well, musicals are just so over the top and there's not real. Like with this, like instead of using the music to be like, oh, it's time for a song, they use the music and the musical numbers to convey their dreams and the fantasy of their love and convey the feeling of basically falling in love. Because in a movie so rooted in love and having big dreams and having your heart broken, they show all those feelings throughout the songs rather than, just having a song for a song's sakes, which feel like you go watch the Wonka movie and then they're hugging a giraffe and there's a song that's just like, well, it's so obviously just a song for song's sake. Where this movie,
it's like, oh, a song should go here.
I like that point because, it's how they go into every song in the movie is so seamless.
It's fluid. Yeah.
Yeah, like the first number, the opening number, it starts with like car horns honking, right?
Yeah.
And then it ends with car horns honking. And the one scene, when Mia is in her big audition, it just starts, tell a story and then she's just talking and then it turns into a song. And then it turns into this massive musical piece about, dreamers and artists, and this beautiful piece about how having dreams gets you hurt. And that's like one of the worst parts about being a dreamer and one of the worst parts about being some kind of artist. But you also have to thank the people who put up with all that pain to deliver you painting and plays and art and music. And it's like all this from just an audition piece goes into this super deep piece about how she's feeling. I think it's just masterful because they do it at every single song point. They do some kind of transition like that. And it's like makes you almost forget you're watching a musical until they're flying around in the observatory. But it's just all so natural, and it all works so well together within the dialogue and the pacing that it's like it's true visionary work, I think.
Well, I think that's like a real testament to like the score. Like it's so expertly like utilized, like always lingering in the background to where you could be swept up by it at any moment. So it doesn't really feel like, oh, there's a song. It's like a natural progression.
Yeah, and it's just to put the cherry on top, it's like a beautiful score. Like it's so fantastic. And I think just to sidestep a little bit into the music, because how can you not talk about music right now?
Yeah.
I saw an interview with the composer about the music for the film, and he said he recorded and used I think it was Steinways from the 1920s. They're a smaller, less grand piano. And he cited that it gives you a more intimate feeling with the music. It's not grand, it's not booming. Like your sound isn't as full with these kind of smaller pianos. But with that aspect of you're thinner, you're a bit closer to your sound, it gives you a more intimate feeling that you're like right there, and it's very connected to you. I think that is a very interesting piece because, you don't think about it when you're listening to the music, but when you hear that, you're like, oh my God, yeah, like when you hear Mia and Sebastian's theme, kind of like rainfall all the way through the film on the piano very lightly, it feels like you're so close to it. It doesn't feel like it's off in the distance in the starry land. It's right there with you, and it's like deep in your core. And I think that's a testament to like even how they pick the instrumentation for the score on top of the score itself just being very well written and sounding very nice.
Damien wrote this movie in college originally when he was in film school with his roommate, who was Justin Hurwitz, which did all of the composing and everything. Like they started working on to get that together. That was a big passion project because they both loved the musicals. They wanted to redo one, but like they didn't have the money to do a movie of this scale where, he went and made Whiplash.
They couldn't get it funded. No one wanted to buy this movie.
Yeah. So they went and made Whiplash, which was such a small scale but really like deep movie. And then from there I think that's really cool that they worked together that whole time. One of the songs in the movie is in Whiplash in the background as they're talking, which works really well on another level. But
that's at the jazz club, right?
It's I think it's this like one of me and Sebastian's songs. So like more resembling love and their relationship, which I think it's when he's on the date with the girl. I don't know exactly where.
It's kind of interesting because Mia has a line that says, jazz is something that you just have in the background and you talk over, right? So that's an interesting callback. That's really cool.
That I think is one of my favorite setups of the movie because she says that, and then in one of the next scenes is when she's on the date with her boyfriend at the boyfriend. And she clues into the song. Exactly. And they all talk over it. And I think that's one of my favorite setups of the movie.
Like she hears the jazz. It's beautiful.
It was that moment she's listening to jazz that inspired her to go seek out Sebastian at the movies, right?
That's where she started to love jazz. You like jazz?
And love him. By proxy. She wants to be with somebody that inspires her to listen to the jazz, metaphorically. Mia and Sebastian, they're both passionate about their respective art forms, but they have very different ways of going about it. So like Mia's more sort of quiet and like reserved with it, almost shy, and then Sebastian's like overconfident, almost like abrasive with like how passionate he is about jazz. And so like they sort of bring those qualities out of each other.
Yeah.
Mia with the more practical and him with the more bombastic, fantastical, shout from the mountaintops kind of vibe to it.
Well, I think too, even with the way they go about their careers, it works into kind of how I see the colors working, but like it fits in with in the beginning, like he's not really looking for big work. Like he's not trying to advance in his career. He just has his mind set on his dream. Where Mia, she's just doing the struggle, doing the crappy auditions, you know, really working for it with like no goal in sight. She's left her big dreams until, you know, he comes in and sees like his dreams. He's like inspires her to go and do her play. And I think that works well with like lots of the way they use color in the movie to start talking about that, because that's such a big part of this movie. Like in the beginning too, like you see him sitting at the place he drinks his coffee 4 hours away from his house or whatever he said. He's sitting looking at the club, and the club's blue, and, you know, behind him is red. And all throughout the opening, like, you know, he's wearing a lot more red central colors, where she's wearing a lot more blues, where it's kind of, it shows, you know, she is a lot more stuck in reality where he's living in his dream, and we're kind of intertwined and stuff. You know, they come together, and, you know, when she's auditioning, she wears some reds, and then she has a red bag. Like there's stuff like that where like she starts having some red.
The way that this movie uses like these two elements of music and color to sort of convey emotion. Like these two elements that, you know, average moviegoers, you know, usually take for granted. It's inspiring. It's like nothing I've ever seen, you know. It's expertly done.
Which I think that plays into the fact, like, when the music dies between the two of them and they're mad at each other, and it stops being a musical for that kind of, but that's really where the movie turns back into a movie, and it's a lot more serious. The acting's a lot more subtle. It's a lot, like, the cinematography is a lot calmer. That's where I really love that movie, because that's where it really gets, like, the contrast of the two really show.
Well, I like that the art dies. Like, the cinematography, the lighting, all that, it, like, fades during those moments. Like, obviously, like, the whole front half of the movie is dominated by, like, these very
color,
well thought out, you know, color and camera moves and, and you know, song and music and dance. And then, you know, that whole thing when he is on tour, you know, the editing's more traditional, the cinematography is more traditional. It's, you know, not as vibrant, you know, things are desaturated, they're physically darker, everything happens at night. So it's like thematically just an awesome segment. And then it goes back to the, you know, back when at the end when they're finally in their elements, you know, it's back to the artistry, the lighting effects and all those kind of things. So it's very hard not to get swept up though by like the color theory of it.
Yeah, but it's so prominent though.
Yeah, it's in your face. Like the whole movie, I realize, is balanced. You know, like
between red and blue.
On one half, red, blue, and yellow, the primary colors, right?
But it's also too when things mix, when things are changing, what mixes? I guess blue. Yeah, blue and green, or blue and yellow make green. So it's like when they're fighting and stuff with all the change, it's like the reality. Like, at least in the argument, too. That can work with the...
See, I have a different... That's where my theory kind of changes a little bit. Because
the green?
The video claims that green is when they're arguing and they're not doing very well. And that purple is, like, the opposite. You know, they are doing very well. In my theory, I put red as dreams, which is basically dead on.
Yeah, that's what he was saying, too.
Yellow is... not necessarily like the herald of change, but it's like when you're the most true to who you are as a person. So when Mia meets Seb for the second time, when she's at the party, she's in an all yellow, bright yellow dress.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, she's herself. She's like utterly herself. She's joking around with him. She's playing with him. She's teasing him.
Yeah.
And I called blue as like what you want in the moment and like what you're desiring, like what your deepest desire might be.
I think though it being reality and being like the opposite to dreams and being reality. I think that the way it's used in a lot of the scenes too, like there's some parts where like there's a lot of red and then it goes hard into blue where they make a realization.
I'll just say this about the color. I think broad strokes, there's a lot of specificity you could get into with color theory in this movie, but I think broad strokes, the use of primary colors sort of represents, like, to me, this is my read of it, represents, the dream, like wanting to be famous, wanting to perform, wanting to whatever. These people with their own dreams sort of contrast against their environment, despite these magical like dream ballet sequences where like everything's all like bright and colorful. In actuality, Los Angeles is cold and unforgiving and promises you this dream that it might never deliver on, but all of these people are in these bright colors persevering against that coldness.
Yep.
And now let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsors.
Hi, I'm Jackson's mom, and I'm here to tell you about our Patreon. Starting at $3 a month, you can unlock early access to videos and podcast episodes, exclusive series and behind-the-scenes content. You can participate in live episodes and get the ad-free extended versions of this podcast with bits like this.
Like you go watch the Wonka movie and then they're hugging a giraffe and there's a song that's just like, well, it's so obviously just a song for song's sake. Where this movie,
it's like, oh, a song should go here.
That would go really good here. Really, it's really good here in the podcast. A song right now.
He's got to sing about chocolate and his mom.
Well, there's chocolate.
Because Wonka has a mom now. He needed more motivation.
So, subscribe to our Patreon today. The link is in the show notes. And now, back to the show.
All right, let's get back on track.
You guys were talking a little bit about the opening scene. You guys want to go into that right now?
Oh yeah, that's huge in the opening scene.
Well, that's one of the things that I thought was cool with the opening was like going back to making the old school musicals and paying homage to that. Like originally the opening was going to be long, and with the old musicals, like they wouldn't really have post credits, they would just have pre-roll credits. So what they were going to do was they were going to have a nice overture of kind of all the songs in the movie over the pre-roll credits, and then it would go down into seeing me as Sebastian in their cars like we see them, like he's listening to jazz, practicing jazz, and she's doing our audition, and then it would go into the big bum 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 song. I think they call it Traffic. They always refer to it as Traffic. So go into that number, and then it would go back to Mia and Sebastian, and if the traffic would start moving, he'd honk, and so it would do that way, which kind of obviously they didn't stick with that. I think one of the things they tried to do was take out the number, the big musical number, leave in the overture, because that's like it being such a big part of musicals. So they leave the overture and the introduction of the characters, but it didn't work without the big number because it doesn't set up the whole movie. Like, I'm trying to think of a way to explain it, because that opening number is really just showing you like the dreams of all the people in LA, and LA's the place you go to follow your dreams. Mm-hmm. And right with that number really sets up the movie for what it is. And to not have that in the movie, and then the first time we start singing is with the roommates, where they break out
like 15 minutes in.
Yeah, that doesn't work that way, right? So to have it start with the number, then we meet our characters. I think that's where it works. I think it was Emma Stone was explaining like kind of when the characters are together, there's music between them. Like it's not necessarily like we're supposed to believe that they're just breaking out into these musical numbers. It's like more the conveying the feelings of what's happening. Yeah. So when they're together, there's music between them, but like in the fight scene where we literally see the record end and the music stop, like it dies, and that it really shows the music between them has stopped by that point until like at the end where they're together and he plays her the song that he's kind of chosen to resemble her throughout the movie, and I just like that.
To circle back to the opening real quick, the idea that they were going to cut that is
Crazy.
That's insane, because like you sort of need that in terms of musicals. Like you need that opening number is like pivotal, because it like you said, it sets the tone, it sets the themes, it really sets up the rules, but it's also there isn't really like an antagonist in this entire movie.
Yeah.
But it sort of sets up the setting, these
Los
bright,
Angeles.
colorful, Los Angeles. These people pursuing their dreams in these bright primary colors against the cold grays of Los Angeles. That's the main adversary of the entire movie, if anything, is just their setting, is this place where dreams are promised and die just as swiftly.
I love that take, actually, because I noticed a lot of problems with Mia's desires and dreams throughout the movie. Like, hers are by far the least clear, I think. But we get the most about how, like, ruthless the city is and how dream-killing LA can be through her perspective.
City of Stars, yeah.
I love this.
It's a song that questions the city and it questions the dream. It expresses like suspicion, possibly dread, at the idea of like where things are going, or at the sign of things going good. It's poetic. Is this the start of something wonderful and new, or one more dream that I cannot make true? And then the song reprises later in the film when, things with Mia and Sebastian and their progress towards their dreams are in a more stable place, where they have that sort of warm green in the background, and Mia joins in for a verse, and it's still questioning the city and the dream. City of stars, are you shining just for me? There's so much that I can't see. But Mia comes in, and it becomes this reassurance that so long as they have their love, they're going to be all right.
They're going to be okay. It's going to be all right.
They're going to be all right. Yeah.
What I love too about that is obviously our first introduction. He's like hesitant and he's like all self-aware of like the dangers that this could bring. But then when he starts singing it to Mia, she thinks it's like a love song. And then when she chimes in, she shows where she's at, with her love. But I wonder if Sebastian would have kept it with his doubt, because I think that moment happens after he signed the contract to join the band and stuff. So in theory, like that song could still show his doubt and his concerns, right?
I think too with Mia, it's like he takes that job because like he wants to do it for her. Like it's not his dream, but he wants to be more reliable to her as well by doing, not just trying to go for his dream, but, be someone, like actually have a job and make some money. And
yeah, it's almost where they like switch positions. Yep. Whereas like Mia's practicality is rubbing off on him in sort of like a negative way, where he takes this job doing music that he hates, and then Sebastian's sort of more fantastical, abrasive approach to his passion rubs off on Mia, where she risks everything to put on her own one-woman show.
And it pulls them apart.
I'm so happy you brought this up, because this was a big point I wanted to make with the characters.
Can I say too, before you get into it, I think, because before we move on from music to characters, I think my favorite thing about them actually making the music for the movie is like, was it Justin Hurwitz? Wait. With Justin Hurwitz too, he did all the composing of it, but when it actually came to the lyrics of it, they like had the done tracks, but then they gave it to people to actually put lyrics to, which in one of the interviews I was listening to, he was like impressed. Like they had like limited syllables and beats to like actually get the lyrics in there, because you're writing lyrics to already done track, where they were able to pull out that much detail and character and story into the songs already off of, which I feel like a lot of older stuff too, it's like it's a lot more surrounded by the music and then you put your lyrics to it. But I like that fact of, you know, with these pre-done songs, like I don't know, it's just cool filmmaking thing if they put, despite having such limited, they did such a wonderful job with the lyrics.
It takes such a step away from what's traditional in musical lyrics. You know, granted, I'm not very well versed in musicals, but it feels a lot more poetic and poetry around an emotion rather than like an expository or like very in your face lyrical sensation you see in a lot of other kind of like musicals. Like I feel like a lot of musicals are like, I'm singing my emotions at you, versus like La La Land is like,
I need to let it go.
Yeah, like whereas La La Land is just like, I'm feeling these things and that's expressed through the actual tune. And then my insecurities, my doubts, my futures are more kind of wrapped up in this little more poetry based like lyric. Like obviously City of Stars is our best example right now. Is like, you know, he's not saying that he's doubtful about, you know, because it could have been like, I'm doubtful of this, I don't know what is coming next or whatever, right? But it's obviously more
like more literal.
It's less poetic. You know, it's more metaphorical. Whereas I feel like that strays a little bit from,
as the whole movie is,
music. Yeah, and I think that's probably another step out of the musical genre that they took that really worked. Granted, I could be disproven in 2 seconds by someone who actually knows a lot more musicals than I do, but that's my interpretation. It's my thought.
If we're talking about the you know, sort of the poetic constructed nature of the lyrics, then we got to talk about Start a Fire. Start a Fire. It's the first time that Mia sees what the kind of music Seb's making with his band, and it is tragic. Like that entire sequence of like, you know, the spotlight's on him. There's like the spotlight is a motif throughout the entire throughout the entire thing, performing, and like how they both feel seen like through each other and stuff. But then it's like turned on its head, and like there's so much vibrant color and it's just all over the place and it means nothing, and Mia's sort of being swallowed up by the crowd right as Seb gets into his like techno keyboard solo, and it's like, oh my
everyone
god,
freaks out.
And like the lyrics to this song, you know, up until this point it's all been poetic and it means something. They're just not talking about anything in this song. It's like this kind of perfect satire of like modern pop. You know, like let's look at some of the lyrics. I don't care if this turns into a riot. Let's get reckless, tear this place down to the floor. Turn the music way up loud. Can't nobody stop us now. I just know I feel so good tonight. What the fuck are we talking about? This means nothing. It's gibberish. It's kind of perfect,
but it's catchy.
You know, in terms of like it's catchy, but it's like it's like this very good satire of like the exact kind of music that Seb is against.
Yeah.
And then that little Uptown Funk riff they do, like the da 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 da. That was like a moment in the theater where I was like, oh my god, I get what they're saying. I get what he's doing.
I think too, like Damien Chazelle, after, you know, I haven't seen Babylon, which I need to, but like after seeing Whiplash, he just has such a love for music, and I think it really comes out using music to tell a story. And you look at Whiplash, and you know, it's the most complicated song, and he just wants to be good at jazz. And I guess too, it also mixed with like his love for, I guess, jazz as well. Both the movies have the same kind of story of which like they want jazz, they love jazz, and they want jazz to live, and they want to be great at jazz, where they both have it in very different ways. But I think it's really cool to see him tell that through, and to look at his work too and just see the perfectionisms and how detailed it all is, and how, you know, specific he gets with stuff. You really can tell that there's a part of him in there too.
Well, everyone's seen the behind the scenes footage of the whip pans back and forth from Seb and Mia in the jazz club.
Oh yeah.
To do that practically is unnecessary, granted. Like you could do that easily without having to keep the camera rolling. But the fact that like they went through the extra effort to make it perfect, the way they shoot the film with the camera is like, he was talking about how the sunset scenes in LA, you know, when actually City of Stars is first brought up, And then when they dance out on the road, they wouldn't shoot that digitally. Like they wouldn't do that with a green screen. They went and shot that during Magic Hour in LA. They only had 30-minute windows to record these one takes, and the dancing scene was a one take. It shows that Damien Chazelle is in himself the characters that he writes as this person who wants to be perfect with their craft and master their craft. And Whiplash was meant to show that his perfectionism was tearing him down as an individual, as an artist. And La La Land was the moment in which his perfectionism turned him into the perfect and like masterful filmmaker that he is today, right? I think that's just a beautiful, kind of background to it.
And to with the whip pan stuff too. I think my favorite part, not only the style of him using that a lot in his movies, but the whip pan. Not only do we whip pan back and forth like 5 times, when they're done whip panning, it whip pans and the camera moves throughout the entire. It's a long dolly shot, and that part I realized that watching it this morning, where I went, oh, no way they just did that. There was a part of me that was just like, wait, they just went from whip panning to then a dolly, and it was just that caught me off guard, and I was just like, whoa, that's cool.
Well,
that was just a look.
Well, you notice the entire opening scene is one take up until it cuts to Mia in her car. So the entire opening scene, the entire dance number.
I mean, I think there's a couple stitches in there, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no one take is ever a perfect uncut one take, right? But it's just he uses it so much, but it's so like blended in. You never really notice it until like your second or third time watching. We're like, wait, we've been on the same shot for like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, a lot of these shots where it's like they're long shots, and there's also like these wide shots where like you'll crane up and you'll just see the stage or the street or whatever, like just how like vast the sort of space they encounter is, or they exist in is. And I think that's very evocative.
They use the camera to really emphasize. It's almost like the camera flies, right? Like it's in a magical world, right? So they definitely use it as such to just emphasize that magic they want to show in the city. Beautiful. I think their technical work on this movie is insane as well. Like all of their lighting effects are practical. Pretty much all of their lighting effects are practical. When Mia and Sebastian are so like honed in on what they're doing in their craft, that's when you get like their entire background blacks out, and then you get their spotlight on them. You'd mentioned earlier that it was like the act of being seen. I looked at that more as like they're just in their zone. Like there's nothing else in the world except for them, their craft, and the light. And like they do it practically. They put everything on a dimmer. They put everything on like a dolly track, a dimmer, and then it's just the camera moving and then the lights coming down for such a strong visual effect. It's just like we tried that so much in college, and we could never get it to hit the exact same way.
I think so in that Oscars sort of roundtable almost thing with like some of the key creators, Damien Chazelle said something that kind of stuck with me, and I'm paraphrasing here. Musicals allow emotion to override logic, and then he goes on to talk about how that gives him room to play with the canvas, sort of play with the way it's shot and the world around him. But I think that's sort of just the core principle of musicals. It's like when the emotions are so big, like when you can't talk, you sing, and when you can't sing, you dance. And that's fundamental to the genre, to the medium of musicals, which is probably the core reason why you get either you love it or you hate it. It's that suspension of disbelief that you have to go in with.
Right.
And if you can, you get magic and whimsy. You get wonder and awe.
Get swept off your feet.
You get swept off your feet. You get sent to a Technicolor world made out of music and machine.
That's a very good ending piece, actually. I love that.
I took a bow. I took a curtsy.
They really do, like, when everything's like dreamy and like too good to be, and like it really is playing up the musical. Like I think the whole tonal change between it being this big musical, overacting, big emotions, big movement, and all that stuff that's really there in the acting and the camera movement and stuff. When it's switched and we're really pulled into reality, the camera gets a lot more subtle, and there's a lot more reverse shot, back and forth coverage, close up. Like, we get a lot more close too compared to all the musical stuff where you're seeing from afar like you would in a musical. When we finally, there's the emotional stuff, we come back into the regular scene coverage. And I just think that that's crazy. And like the dedication to, with this movie, with like all the rehearsal stuff, like I think we talked about at Breakfast Club about they had time to rehearse in that movie, but with this it's like Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone is like, they don't have much dance experience, so you have to go through all the dances and all that stuff. But alone, Ryan Gosling never played piano. Like, he kind of did. I think the piano teacher was like, he kind of could play from ear, but he couldn't read music. Mm-hmm. So he learned not by reading the music, but learned by like learning the songs. And he learned in over, I think, 3 or 4 months. He spent 2 hours a day, 5-6 days a week, actually learning all of the songs to actually play them. And then as well, then doing like 2 hours of dancing, and then from there sitting with Damien and Emma and going over the whole movie in rehearsal style. But
that's amazing.
It's a real testament to getting good actors and getting good creatives all together to really do it well. Because if Ryan Gosling didn't play the piano, I think like just cutting to a close-up of his hands wouldn't have sold as well as being able to do the long shots and see him play and get passionate about it. And I think it's really dedication there.
It would not be the same movie if you had to cut to a hand double.
Yeah, right.
And just that alone is insane.
Yeah, it'd also take away from like his character pretty substantially. Yeah. Like take you out of that, because like he's all about authenticity. He's all about the purity of the music. So if he's not playing the music,
it doesn't work.
Pretty funny.
I don't think we'd be talking about it. I love this movie.
It's a good movie.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching this episode of Mixed Reviews.
Ba, 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 ba.
Bum, 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 bum.
Ba, 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 ba.
I think that's where we cut it. That's where we
City of Toms.
My brain's just degenerating now.
Yeah. Okay. Good night, fellas.
Good night. I'm going to bed.
Sleep time.
Hey there, I'm Jackson's mom, and this has been Mixed Reviews with Tom McMahon, Jackson Brotherton, Jordan Vairo, and Asha Joseph. This episode was mixed, mastered, and edited by TheOldManDave. Be sure to follow our podcast on your favorite podcast app and join our Patreon for extended, ad-free, and bonus episodes. The link is in the show notes. This has been a Vanish Entertainment production. Thank you for listening.